sky as the sun sunk behind the distant mountains, painting the land in blood and gold. When the old gunslinger found her slumped against the cold stone, her body barely moving, her buckskin fringed dress torn and stained with dust and blood, a single feather trembling in her dark hair as if it too fought to survive, his name was Elijah Boone, a man carved by loss, missing one arm and carrying more ghosts than bullets, and the moment he knelt beside her, pressing his rough fingers against her wrist, he felt a weak but stubborn pulse that stirred something he thought had died decades ago, hope. He lifted her hand to his lips and whispered, "Don't you dare leave this world yet." Though he had once sworn never to fight for another soul again, the trail around them was littered with broken arrows, overturned supplies, and the smell of fresh violence, proof that death had only just passed through. Carefully, painfully, he lifted her into his arms and carried her across the sand to his waiting horse, racing the darkness as cold night spilled over the desert like a curse. She woke in fire and shadows, pain blazing through her ribs as lantern light flickered against wooden cabin walls, and when her blurred vision cleared, she saw him sitting nearby, brewing coffee with one hand, his revolver resting close as if even sleep might attack him. "You should be dead," he said without turning, but the desert decided otherwise, and she struggled into a sitting position, forcing strength into her voice as she asked, "Who are you?" To which he replied quietly, "The man who found you before the vultures." Her name was Ariana, and she told him little of why she was hunted, only that men with black painted faces had slaughtered her caravan, and that something she carried was worth more than gold to the wrong people. He didn't press her for answers, because he understood the weight of secrets and the graves they dug. Their uneasy peace shattered on the fourth night when gunfire tore through the cabin walls and shadows flooded the windows. In one swift motion he shoved a rifle into her hands and growled, "If they break through, you shoot." And without knowing when fear turned into fury, Ariana obeyed. Elijah moved like a wounded legend, firing with merciless precision, dropping attacker after attacker despite the blood leaking from his side, until one raider slipped behind him, blade raised high, and Ariana pulled the trigger, the shot echoing like thunder and dropping the man dead at her feet. When the smoke settled, the cabin stood scarred but standing, and Elijah collapsed into a chair, breathing hard, staring at the floor as if the ghosts were waiting for him there. "Why did you save me?" Ariana whispered, kneeling before him. His eyes lifted slowly. "Because once," he said, voice breaking like old wood, "I chose myself over another life, and hell has collected its interest ever since." Outside, the stars watched in silence, and far beyond the canyon, darker forces were already riding toward them. They came at dawn, not as wild raiders, but as disciplined killers, 5 riders silhouetted against the rising sun as dust rolled toward the cabin like an omen. Ariana stood frozen at the window as Elijah buckled his gun belt with his one good hand, already knowing this was not a fight meant to be survived, only chosen. At last, she broke and revealed the truth. The satchel she had guarded across the desert did not carry gold or jewels, but a ledger filled with names of powerful men tied to trafficking, slavery, and murder, proof that could collapse empires and ignite wars. Elijah listened in silence, then nodded once and said, "Then today, we make sure it's worth the blood it took to protect it." Gunfire erupted before the sun fully cleared the ridge, splintering wood and stone as the cabin became a battlefield. Elijah fought like a storm trapped in human flesh, and Ariana beside him found a strength she never knew she possessed. But bullets never run out of enemies, and when their last rounds were spent, they fled on horseback toward the canyon, pursued by men who no longer cared about mercy or money, only silence. At the canyon's edge, The world ended in roaring wind and endless stone. The riders surrounded them, their leader dismounting with a slow, satisfied smile. "Give us the ledger," he called, "and you walk away breathing." Ariana's hands trembled around the satchel, and for a moment, survival tempted her like a lie whispered sweetly into the ear. Elijah stepped in front of her and looked back once, a calm, steady glance that carried the weight of every regret he had ever carried. "Whatever happens," he said, "you don't turn back." Then, without warning, he took the satchel from her hands and hurled it into the canyon. Time shattered. The wind carried it downward into darkness, carrying every secret and every monster's name into a grave no one could reach. The leader screamed in rage and fired. The bullet struck Elijah square in the chest. He staggered but did not fall immediately. Dust swirled around him as he turned to Ariana one final time and whispered, "You are free now." Then he stepped backward into the void. Ariana's scream was swallowed by the wind. Days later, she reached the frontier town alone and told the world what little she could with the evidence that remained. Some men fell. Others vanished. But the chains did not rebuild as easily as they had broken. Months passed, and one evening, beneath a familiar burning sky, Ariana returned to the canyon and placed a stone marker near the place where everything had ended. Here fell a man who chose redemption over survival. The desert offered only silence in reply, but for the first time, it felt like peace. Clapperboard Storm YouTube subscribe call, end for narration. If this story touched your heart, stirred your emotions, or made you believe that redemption is always possible, then don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional, cinematic, and unforgettable storytelling.